Imagine being an astronaut, ready to come back to Earth after a short trip to space, but suddenly, your ride home leaves without you. That's exactly what happened to NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore. Their spacecraft, the Boeing Starliner, returned to Earth empty on September 7, 2024, while they stayed behind on the International Space Station. Today, we're going to explore why this happened and what it means for these astronauts in future space travel. What actually happened? The Boeing Starliner is a new spacecraft built to take astronauts to and from the International Space Station. NASA chose Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, two experienced astronauts, to test it out. They were supposed to spend just 8 days in space. Their job was to make sure the Starliner worked well and to do some experiments on the space station. Soon after the Starliner reached the space station, things started to go wrong. Butch Wilmore explained, "We encountered some issues that made us uncomfortable about returning on Starliner. The main problems were with the spacecraft's thrusters and a helium leak. The thrusters are like small engines that help the spacecraft move in space. They weren't working as well as they should. This was a big problem because the thrusters are crucial for getting back to Earth safely. The helium leak was another serious issue. Helium is used to push fuel into the engines, and a leak could mean the engines might not work properly, which is very dangerous in space." NASA and Boeing's engineers worked hard to fix these problems, but as time passed, they realized it would take longer than expected to make the Starliner safe for the astronauts to return. The big decision. After carefully thinking about all the risks, NASA decided to bring the Starliner back to Earth without Williams and Wilmore. This was a tough choice because it meant changing all their plans and making the astronauts stay in space much longer. Wilmore said, "Fortunately, we had the space station, and we had other options such as staying and coming back in a different way if that's what the data showed, and this shows how important it is to have backup plans in space." The empty Starliner landed safely in New Mexico on September 7, 2024. Even though it didn't bring the astronauts back, its safe return gave NASA and Boeing important information about how it works. You might think Williams and Wilmore would be upset about staying in space longer, but they've been very professional about it. Sunita Williams even said, "This is my happy place. I love being up here in space." But it's not all easy. Williams admitted she was a bit worried about missing plans she had made for fall and winter. She said, "In the back of my mind, there are folks on the ground who have plans, like my family, spending time with my mother, and I think I was fretting more about that, like the things we had planned for this fall or winter, but everybody was on board and that prepared us." Wilmore agreed, saying, "We wanted to take Starliner to completion and land back home, but you have to turn the page and look at the next opportunity." This shows how astronauts are trained to be flexible and stay positive even when things don't go as planned. A longer stay than expected. Instead of coming home after a week, Williams and Wilmore now have to stay on the International Space Station until February 2025. That's almost 5 months longer than what they planned. This longer stay means they have to adjust to a lot of things. They need to be careful with their supplies, exercise more to stay healthy in zero gravity, and find ways to keep their minds active during the extra months in space. But it's not all bad news. The extra time means they can do more experiments and research. The space station is like a special laboratory, and having experienced astronauts there longer can lead to new scientific discoveries. As other astronauts come and go on their regular missions, Williams and Wilmore have to get used to working with different people. It's like consistently and constantly changing teammates in a game. Even with these challenges, both astronauts are still doing their jobs well. They're talking to people on Earth, teaching students about space, and sharing their unique experiences through interviews and events. One interesting part of Williams and Wilmore's longer space stay is that they still plan to vote in the upcoming elections. Wilmore said, "I sent down my request for a ballot today." Williams is also excited about voting from space. Astronauts have been able to vote from space since 1997. That's when Texas, where many astronauts live, passed a law allowing it. The first American to vote in space was David Wolf in 1997, while he was at the Mir space station. Williams and Wilmore haven't said who they're voting for, keeping their political views private. This is important because NASA astronauts represent all Americans, not just one political party. What's next for the Starliner? The problems with the Starliner mission have made people wonder about its future. However, both NASA and Boeing say they're committed to fixing the issues and improving the spacecraft. Wilmore mentioned that Boeing is ready to make changes based on what they learned from this mission. This is crucial in space exploration, where learning from mistakes can prevent future problems. NASA plans to carefully review everything that happened during this mission before deciding what to do next with the Starliner program. They'll look closely at why the thrusters didn't work right and what caused the helium leak. The goal is still to use Starliner for regular trips to the space station, and NASA wants to have 2 different spacecraft for these trips: Starliner and SpaceX's Crew Dragon. Having 2 options is safer because if one has a problem, they can use the other. Even though there were issues, the fact that Starliner returned to Earth safely on its own is a good sign. It shows that many parts of the spacecraft work well, even if some need to be fixed. Since the Starliner couldn't bring Williams and Wilmore back as planned, NASA had to find another way to get them home. They decided to use a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft, which has already safely carried several groups of astronauts to and from the space station. Williams and Wilmore are now scheduled to return to Earth in February 2025 on a Crew Dragon. This change of plans shows how important it is to have backup options in space travel. It also shows how different companies and NASA work together to solve problems. This means Williams and Wilmore will spend about 6 months in space, instead of just 8 days. While this is challenging, it also gives them a chance to do more research and gain more experience in long-term space living. What we have learned from this mission? Even though the Starliner mission didn't go as planned, it has taught NASA, Boeing, and everyone involved in space travel some valuable lessons. Number 1, it's important to test spacecraft thoroughly before sending people on them. Number 2, having backup plans and different options for space travel is crucial. Number 3, astronauts need to be prepared for unexpected changes and longer missions. For NASA, this mission shows why it's good to work with different companies for space travel. Because they had contracts with both Boeing and SpaceX, they were able to find another way to bring astronauts home when Starliner had problems. For Boeing, while the issues with Starliner are disappointing, they provide important information that can be used to make the spacecraft better and safer in the future. For the astronauts, this mission has proven how well-trained and adaptable they are. Williams and Wilmore have handled the unexpected changes professionally and continue to work hard despite the uncertainty about their mission. Wrapping it up, the Starliner mission reminds us that space travel is still very challenging and sometimes unpredictable. However, it also shows how smart and resourceful the people working in space exploration are. As we continue to explore space and plan for missions to the Moon and Mars, experiences like this help us prepare for the unexpected challenges we might face. Every problem solved and lesson learned brings us one step closer to becoming better space travelers. The story of Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore's extended stay on the International Space Station is an exciting chapter in our ongoing space adventures. What started as a short test flight has turned into a months-long mission, showing both the difficulties and the incredible flexibility of our space programs. As we wait for Williams and Wilmore to return to Earth in February 2025, we can think about all the important lessons this mission has taught us. It has shown us why it's important to be flexible in space, why we need good backup plans, and how tough and adaptable our astronauts are. Even though the Boeing Starliner came back to Earth empty, it has given us a lot of valuable information that will help us make future space travel safer and better. And for Williams and Wilmore, their unexpected journey continues, reminding us all how unpredictable and amazing space exploration can be. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stay tuned for more out-of-this-world stories and space updates.